Viserys goes to meet the Velaryons to discuss this proposed marriage between Rhaenyra and their son. This marriage negotiation is taken part in part because of going back to the previous episode where the Velaryons had arranged a marriage between themselves and one of the other houses, and the sense was they're one of the strongest allies, they're one of the strongest houses within the kingdom. It's important to maintain a strong alliance with them, to maintain a strong, family relationship with them. And the way to do that is through marriage. Hightower was actually the one who proposed the idea to Viserys that House of Velaryon might be a good match for Rhaenyra, given their strength and all of their other attributes. And so that kind of set the gears turning. Here we have it where, Rhaenyra meets the Velaryon boy, and the two of them seem like they could possibly make something work. So on that level, it could potentially be a good match. But then at the same time, it's like you have to look at it where as House Targaryen and House Velaryon are meeting to discuss merging their houses, in a sense, through marriage, you have where Hightower is basically being cast out, where he has been fired from being Hand of the King because of his wheeling and dealing, manipulated a lot of the situations, manipulated Viserys. And the reality is that while he sees it as him potentially doing a good thing, trying to avoid war and whatnot, and that he recognizes that with Rhaenyra being heir, much of the kingdoms will not be in support of this. That whenever it is that Viserys dies, if Rhaenyra is still in place as heir, it's going to cause problems because some of the members of the Seven Kingdom are not going to be accepting of this. And with that, you're going to have a split, which can lead to very serious war. And his thing was, by pushing for Aegon to become heir, it would help to squash a lot of that drama before it gets started. And it's like, on the one hand, what he's saying makes sense, but the problem is the way that he went about it, right? This kind of thing of, it's understandable, like, I'm doing what's best for the kingdom, yes, but he did so by manipulating Viserys, whereas Hand to the King, what you should have done was to sit him down and have a conversation with him, explain to him, basically state to him what you stated to Alicent, instead of, setting up Alicent to, to not really seduce him, but, manipulating the situation to marry him to Alicent to then, produce this heir and whatnot. It looks like you're operating in your own best interest. It looks shady. Whereas had he stated from the beginning and worked with Viserys to figure out this whole marriage situation and whatnot, the end result would have probably been different. So Viserys and Corlys work out a marriage agreement for Rhaenyra and Laenor. And as it turns out, Laenor has some skeletons and secrets of his own, which his parents are aware of. That's not necessarily the case with Viserys. Basically, he seems to be gay, and Rhaenyra has started carrying on this affair with Sir Christian Cole, which her father doesn't know about, but he does know about her entanglement with Daemon. And so, in efforts of uniting the two houses, they're kind of solving their own individual problems, where the Velaryons get to resolve this issue of their son, who likely wouldn't choose a wife of his own. With Viserys, he gets to kind of resolve the situation with Rhaenyra. The two of them are cousins. They've grown up together. They are familiar with each other. They have a degree of comfort that most of the other characters would not, as far as if they were going to get married. And seeing the opportunity here, Rhaenyra chooses to take advantage of it by suggesting to Laemon that they can have a marriage of their own making, right, of their own definition, where they pretty much take care of their responsibilities and whatnot, present this marriage front that the realm needs, while at the same time both pursuing their own individual interests. She can continue to carry on with Christian Cole while he continues to carry on with his gentleman friend. Seems like a good proposal. Works for the both of them. And at the same time, we see that Viserys and Corlys are able to also come to an understanding. There's some give and take and whatnot, but ultimately they settle on an arrangement that works for everyone. Obviously, this is House of the Dragon. Things don't work that simply, and so there will be complications. Part of this is Corlys and Rhaenyra have a conversation off by themselves as Viserys seems to be continuing to fall apart. And the two of them on their own have a conversation about the way that things are and the way that things will be in the future. A major concern is what will happen with the succession. Now, if Laemon is married to Rhaenyra and the time then comes when Viserys dies and you have this tumult that's expected about who's going to succeed him as ruler of the Seven Kingdoms, it then becomes an issue of, with him being married to her, he then has to stand beside her, which means that he can end up being entangled in whatever wars and whatnot comes about as a result of this. And that can spell problems for them, right? Like, they are an ally to the Targaryens, but might not necessarily want to get involved in this war. For Rhaenyra, it's not necessarily the case, as her love interest is Christian Cole, and he is not willing to basically be like her side dude. He wants to have like a real relationship, an actual marriage. The reason being that he takes his vows very seriously, as being a part of the Kingsguard, where he's taken these vows of chastity, and in carrying on with Rhaenyra, he's broken those vows. And he sees marrying her as a way of redeeming himself. Now, obviously, he's not like a lord or anything like that, or anybody's like son where he has any position of standing. All he has is being a part of the Kingsguard. He would like to have the opportunity to redeem himself. And he sees marrying Rhaenyra as a way of doing that. Where he can... And he proposes it to her. He doesn't have anything to offer her, and for this to become a reality, she would basically have to give up her claim to the Iron Throne. She would have to step aside as being heir, and settle might not be the word, but accept the reality of doing something else with her life, right? Not being heir to the throne, kind of setting aside her responsibilities, this title that's been put upon her. And the reality is that while she might fuss and complain about it, whether because of the privileges that come along with it, or just because of the sense of responsibility that her father has placed on her, where she descends from this line of Targaryens and they have to continue this thing, they have to keep this thing going, she doesn't see herself setting this aside, right? She might fuss and complain about it, but when push comes to shove, she's going to do her duty. And as a result of that, it means that this vision that Christian Cole has isn't even on Rhaenyra's radar. That she certainly wants to keep him in her life, but not in this official capacity that he wants. Like, he's not okay with this arrangement of her being married to this other person and carrying on with him. And it speaks to like his virtue, right? And his sense of morals, and that he took this vow and he takes it very seriously. And it's like, you look at the other people around them where they're all like wheeling and dealing and cutting each other's throats and whatnot. And he doesn't seem to be that kind of person. At the same time, Viserys continues like just falling apart, apparently, because like he's getting these leeches. He's like, just raggedy and feeble looking when he goes to see the Velaryons. He's back home now and just looks in terrible shape and condition. He's thinking about like his legacy, right? Not necessarily that he's gonna die today or tomorrow, but he's thinking about when it's all said and done, what are they gonna say about him? How is he going to be remembered? And up to this point, his reign hasn't really been plagued by any kind of violence or war or anything like that. And as a result of that, there aren't like a lot of war stories going around about him because he hasn't really had to fight any wars. And so he asked the question of how is he going to be remembered, and he's trying to figure out, is it that will he be remembered positively for not getting, Westeros embroiled in any wars or internal conflicts? Or is it going to be a negative memory because he hasn't done much of anything, And so we see him kind of weighing things up as well, trying to figure out where he stands. So, as with most momentous occasions within the kingdom, the various houses gather, and there might be a feast, a tournament, some kind of event or something on the water. But here, there's a feast to celebrate the engagement of Rhaenyra to Laenor. Now, with this, you have the heads of the various houses, along with their entourages, arriving here at King's Landing for this great feast. And it's like whenever they get together, they're different factions and whatnot. Some people are drawn to each other, others stand aside from each other, but they generally live in relatively distant areas from each other. But whenever there's these gatherings, it provides an opportunity for drama to unfold, right? People who have problems with each other, they get it on, they, get into it and whatnot. This gathering is no different. Never mind that it's for a joyous occasion, right? Think back to the tournament from the first episode. In the midst of this great feast, Viserys is standing, giving a speech and whatnot, and in very dramatic fashion, in comes Alicent, dressed in this like very vivid green dress. Everyone else has already been seated. The houses were announced and whatnot as they came into this grand room. Everyone was seated and settled and whatnot. In the very midst of Viserys' speech, here she comes walking in. It's a rather dramatic entrance. It's like everyone is already there. She's coming in late, and it's like all eyes are on her. Everyone has to sit there and watch and wait as she makes her way from this entrance to the dais, right, to take her seat. And it just seems to go on for quite some time. She congratulates Rhaenyra on her engagement, but it doesn't really have the right vibe or feeling to it. And she also greets Viserys as well. From there's like some mixing and mingling, but what's important to note is that there has been a rift between Alicent and Rhaenyra. The line has pretty much been drawn in the sand, and you have various houses taking their place on either side. Where you have some where they greet Alicent and express to her, that they stand with her, and then you have others where they stand on the other side. And so it's like, it's been this thing brewing in the background, but you can see it starting to bubble up more to the surface now. These divisions between the houses and how they're going to break down along the lines of if they're with Alicent and her kids being heir versus if they're with Rhaenyra and her children being heir. And some of this breaks down to it's a matter of alliances, right? They are drawn towards people who are either their allies, or if they've had some kind of issue or beef with the other side, it's the thing of like, the enemy of my enemy. And it's this thing of them interacting with each other, but below the surface, there's quite a bit of tension. And it bubbles over when Sir Christian Cole and Layman's gentleman friend get into conversation. where his gentleman friend tells Sir Cole pretty much that, having spoken to Laenor, he is aware of their arrangement and understanding. And given that he's fine with it, he's assuming that Sir Christian Cole is as well. That's not really the case. And he expresses to him that they should both do their duties to continue protecting their respective partners, and it leads to a confrontation of sorts between him and Sir Christian Cole, where the different party goers are there partying. Now, Rhaenyra and Laenor, they don't have any problems with each other, right? Like, they're cool. They're cousins. They know each other. They're fine. It's the people around them, And in the midst of this celebration where everybody's dancing, singing, having a good time and whatnot, a fight breaks out. A melee, really. Initially between Sir Christian Cole, and it's quite a bit going on. Now, add to it that Daemon had been banished, but he's now back. And that means drama, right? Him and Rhaenyra, where he pitches the idea to her that they should run off together. They should be together. But instead, you have it where, despite this drama between Sir Christian Cole and the other guy, that they still get married, You think of what this means for this wedding, for this marriage, and for the future, where what was supposed to be this grand, momentous occasion ends up being this scaled-down thing where Laemon is, wiping blood from his nose, Rhaenyra is crying, Sir Christian Cole is outside about to commit suicide, and at the same time, Viserys passes out because he's, falling apart and has been for quite some time. What kind of a premonition that is for their marriage. Doesn't really seem to bode well. It's of all things, and I thought it was a pretty interesting setup where it goes from this happy, joyous occasion into just bedlam. And the way that the episode ends, where there's a lot going on. You have this wedding going on where Laemon is wiping blood from his nose. Rhaenyra is standing there crying. They're still going through with this wedding. The spectators that were there who had gathered are no longer present because of everything that took place early on. It's just them and their parents, right? And then at the same time, Christian Cole is outside about to commit, harikari, right? The thing where, is it the Japanese where you would stab yourself in the stomach and make this cut or whatever to commit suicide? And right at the moment when he's about to plunge the dagger into his stomach, here comes Alicent Hightower to stop him. Just doesn't bode well for the future. Of all things, it's I'm sure there's been mice or rats at weddings and whatnot, especially in these castles because they look dingy and nasty. But it's the camera zooms out. You see this miserable wedding party. Viserys is laid out on the ground. And then here it is that there's these puddles of blood. And a rat comes up and starts drinking from it. Just doesn't seem like your marriage is off on the most positive foot, on the best foot. Your future just does not seem bright. And it's sort of a shifting of alliances here. The formation of alliance, or rather, alliances being made more clear, right? A clearer line being drawn in the sand and various houses stepping to one side or the other. And then it's at the end of this, you see that Alicent is the one giving comfort to Sir Christian Cole. Interesting.
Thanks for tuning in. To ensure you don't miss any episodes, subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell, go ahead and click the thumbs up button if you like what you saw, and go ahead and share it on social media.